Imagine a city with zero streets. No sidewalks, no alleys, just a sea of rooftops where your front door is literally in the ceiling. This wasn't some crazy futuristic idea. This was real life 9,000 years ago. You didn't walk between houses. You walked on top of them, climbing down a ladder to get inside your home. This is the insane story of Çatalhöyük, one of the first cities ever, and it completely defies everything we think a city should be. Today, we're going inside the ancient homes of this Neolithic marvel to see how these people actually lived. What insane secrets did they bury under their floors? And why in the world did they build their city this way? Before we begin, if you love uncovering hidden dramatic moments from history, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment with your thoughts. It really helps us bring you more stories like this one. On a giant plain in modern-day Turkey, there's a massive man-made mound that held an incredible secret for centuries. It wasn't until archaeologists started digging in the 1960s that they found something impossible: Çatalhöyük. What they discovered was insane. A super-dense city of mud brick houses all crammed together like a giant honeycomb. There were no streets, no courtyards, no paths. The entire city functioned like one single massive organism made of homes. For the 8,000 people who lived here at its peak, the rooftops were everything. They were the public square, the main street, and the neighborhood park all rolled into one. Archaeologists have even found giant ovens built on the roofs, which means they were cooking, doing chores, and having parties up in the open air. To get home, you'd just find the hole in your roof and climb down a ladder into your living room. And this design was a stroke of genius. It created a solid fortress-like wall around the whole city. Like a turtle's shell, this made of homes provided a near-impenetrable defense against attackers or wild animals. Çatalhöyük was lived in from around 7500 BC, and it gives us a snapshot of one of the biggest moments in human history, when we stopped being nomads and started building permanent homes. They were literally reinventing the idea of home and community from scratch. So what was it actually like to live in this bizarre streetless city? Well, life was all about the home. You'd climb down a ladder from the roof and drop right into the main room. This room was the center of the universe. The oven was usually right under the roof opening, acting like a combination stove and chimney, letting smoke escape while warming the room. The rooms had these cool raised platforms that were the Swiss Army knife of Stone Age furniture. People used them as built-in sofas for socializing, workbenches for crafting, and beds for sleeping. Next to the main room were smaller rooms for storage. And it's here that archaeologists found proof that these guys were master farmers. Tons of wheat, barley, peas, and lentils. In fact, in March of 2024, researchers announced a mind-blowing discovery here. What they believe is the world's oldest bread. It's a spongy 8,600-year-old piece they found in a destroyed oven. Life here was busy, but it was tough. Skeletons show that men and women lived almost identical lives. Same diets, same hard work. They ate crops, sheep, goats, and wild cattle. But life was incredibly risky. Childbirth was dangerous, and tons of infants didn't make it. The crowded conditions also meant diseases spread like wildfire. Studies show up to a third of the earliest people had signs of infection. On top of that, some skulls have healed fractures, which tells us that in a place this crowded, fights definitely happened. But these people weren't just surviving. They were creating amazing things. They were skilled artists who cared about how things looked. They made incredible tools from obsidian, a volcanic glass so sharp it could rival a modern surgeon's scalpel, and decorated them. They were a people connected by trade, art, and the intricate social rules that acted as the invisible glue holding their unique world together. So who even were the people of Çatalhöyük? For a long time, the biggest theory was that they were a society run by women who worshipped a powerful mother goddess. This whole idea came from one famous discovery: the seated woman of Çatalhöyük, a statue of a curvy woman on a throne between two giant cats. But the more archaeologists dug, the more they realized that theory was completely wrong. They've now found over 2,000 figurines, and it turns out most of them are of animals. Less than 5% actually show women. The evidence today shows this wasn't a society ruled by one gender, but one that was shockingly equal. Skeleton studies prove men and women had the same social status, ate the same foods, and did the same work. In fact, a 2025 genetic study suggests family lines were passed from mother to daughter. But this wasn't like a royal succession. Think of it more like passing down a family name. It was about identity and heritage, not a power grab by one gender. It seems Çatalhöyük was built on being fiercely equal. Some researchers even call it aggressively egalitarian, thinking they did things like constantly replastering their walls, almost like a modern homeowners association rule, designed to prevent any one family from looking richer than their neighbors. But maybe the most insane thing about their culture is how they treated their dead. The people of Çatalhöyük had no cemeteries. They buried their dead right where they lived, under the floors of their houses. The dead were tucked into a fetal position and buried right under the platforms where the family slept and lived every single day. Their ancestors weren't just memories. They were a physical part of the home's foundation, and sometimes it got even weirder. Some people were buried, only to have their heads dug up and removed later. These skulls were then covered in plaster and painted with red ochre to look like a human face. It's thought these heads were passed around among the living, like a cherished photo of a loved one, before they were finally reburied. The burials were deeply tied to the house. The number of people buried in a home often matched the number of times its walls were repainted, linking the ritual of death with the life of the home. Even after all this time, we've only excavated less than 10% of Çatalhöyük, and this city is still holding on to so many of its secrets. One of the biggest mysteries is what all its art really means. The walls inside the houses were covered with insane murals and strange, scary sculptures. The horns of aurochs, a huge type of wild cattle, were mounted on walls, pointing out into the room. Paintings show dramatic hunting scenes and terrifying, headless figures being swarmed by giant vultures. This vulture thing is especially creepy. Some archaeologists think it points to a kind of sky burial, where bodies were left outside for vultures to strip the flesh, a natural cleaning process before the bones were collected and buried inside the home. While there's no hard proof, the constant images of vultures and headless people suggest a powerful obsession with death. And in August of 2025, archaeologists announced a discovery that makes this all even crazier: a building they've called the House of the Dead. Unlike a normal home, this place seems to have been used just for rituals. This means that if burying relatives under the floor was a private family matter, this building was like the community cathedral or funeral parlor, a place for shared ceremonies about death. And then there's the final question: what happened to this incredible city? After thriving for over 1,000 years, the main part of the city was abandoned around 5950 BC. It wasn't one single disaster. Instead, the evidence points to a slow fade. As the population grew, they may have used up all their resources. The shape of their leg bones literally changed over time, showing later generations had to walk much farther for farmland and firewood. That pressure, plus a drying climate, may have just made life impossible. It seems the city emptied out in a slow-motion evacuation as families gradually moved away over a few hundred years. The story of Çatalhöyük is an insane reminder that building our world wasn't a straight line. It was a massive experiment, full of wild ideas and incredible customs. These ancient people engineered a society without streets, built a culture of shocking equality, and lived right on top of their dead. They created a world that feels both totally alien and deeply human, as they struggled with the same things we do: overcrowding, resources, and just figuring out how to live together. The ruins of Çatalhöyük are so much more than old mud walls. They're a window into a completely different way of being human, and proof of how creative we can be. The secrets buried there teach us that the cities we build are always a reflection of who we are. And maybe they challenge us to imagine new ways of living even today. So, I have to ask you, would you live in a city with no streets? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this crazy trip into the past, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next adventure. Thanks for watching.